Okay, so welcome to the Abbey, everybody. And welcome to Young Adults Week. We have this every year. For, I don't know, we're going to be 20 years old. I think we must have had it 19 years. Yeah, I mean, from the very beginning we started this. Right. And it's one of the times in our annual schedule that we really enjoy. We like the infusion of young energy, because a lot of us are kind of over the hill. But don't be proud because of being young, because pretty soon you will be over the hill too. Yeah, all of us are getting older and we're all getting uglier. So whatever the news is and the press is trying to sell you about being young and attractive is all a bunch of garbage, because nobody, you look at the models, men and women, on the ads, and they're, and you're supposed to look like that. Nobody does, not even them, because all the photos are doctored. And they make us think, well, you have to be like that in order to be worthwhile. And yet, who's becoming younger and who's becoming more beautiful? Yeah? None of us. Yeah, but the media is selling us a lot of fantasy. What do you think? Is that true or not? Yeah, it's probably the first time you've ever heard anybody actually say it out loud. Yeah. But we're like tormented by this stuff of, you're supposed to be like this, you're supposed to look like this, so you're supposed to be an individual in a very conforming way, right? You're supposed to rebel, but you all rebel in the same way. So you have to conform to that. Yes, it's all quite logical. You may notice I sometimes get sarcastic. You'll figure it out after a while. Yeah. So, one of the things I like about Young Adult Week is I think part of me has never grown up, okay? And the body has aged, yeah? But inside, I still, in many ways, I believe as I did when I was in my 20s. So it's gotten more logical and refined since then. But I grew up in the middle of the Vietnam War, and I was pacifist, and I still am. Yeah. So, many things like this. I grew up in the middle of the, America was kind of tumultuous when I grew up. Kind of like now, how the country is so divided in many ways. So I grew up in, I became a teenager in the 60s, and then, in my 20s, in the 70s, I got into my 20s. Yeah, and so that was a very special time in the country. And, and in some ways it's like now, but in many ways it's very different. Yeah, my generation was quite active politically and for speaking out about social injustice and racism and so on. And I don't know, you guys seem a little bit more, I don't know. Yeah, like that. Yeah. So tell me, what is it like when you spend so much of your day exercising your thumbs? Yeah, what does that do to your mind?
It's exhausting.
It's exhausted?
Yeah.
Yeah. Your thumbs are overworked.
Yeah.
Or your brain's overworked.
Yeah,
Your brain, yeah. Yeah, just overloaded with too much?
I just feel like drained.
Okay.
Like every time I'm like, why am I still doing this? But then I do it the next
And
day.
then you do it again, yeah. Yeah, so what's going on when we do that? Yeah, we look and we know, this isn't so good for me, and we keep doing it. Yeah.
I think it's because you get another ego. You know, you get the ego, like it's not actually you who's on Instagram or Snapchat or texting, it's a part of yourself. So then you have like 3 new egos, and egos like to stay alive. So,
Well, explain that again. So you're saying you have different egos?
yeah, it's just like another ego. So it's like what you post a photo on Instagram, and that's not you. It's a one-dimensional version of you. And then you post a photo on Snapchat. It's a one-dimensional version of you. You text someone. That's only words. That's another one-dimensional version of you. So you've created another ego, and egos like to perpetuate themselves and keep themselves alive.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. You're creating identities. Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, quite one-dimensional identities. And I think a lot of these identities, tell me if I'm wrong, we're done to impress other people. Mm-hmm. And so to impress other people, then we have to figure out what they want us to be, and then squeeze ourselves into that image to show them that we are what they want us to be. And that is truly exhausting. And it also doesn't work very well, you know? And is it satisfying? You succeed in making yourself look like you think those people you're attracted to would find attractive. Yeah, so I'm becoming what I think they think I should be. Yeah, no wonder that makes you a little bit nuts, doesn't it? You know? Because it's all really rather false and just, a bunch of images and selling images. And I think as, human beings, we're social animals. We want to connect with other people. And how well can you connect looking at a screen? Yeah. And here you're on cold turkey for a week. It's like when we ask people to turn in their phones when they come here, they're like, but it's part of my body. Are you asking me to cut off part of my body and turn it in for a week? I need this thing, Yeah, so it'll be interesting for you. Yeah, a week of cold turkey, no media, no computer, no devices, no. Yeah. So and then you're here with real live people. Imagine that. Real live people. And I'll tell you what, don't try and impress us. Yeah, don't try. I mean, we all know you'll try, but kind of relax a bit about it. You don't have to impress us. You don't have to impress anybody. Yeah. I mean, you're here this week to really get to know yourself and to start to think about things that probably you've never thought about before, and to explore a different life view that's going to be very different than you probably learned before. So it's kind of an adventure, so take advantage of it. Yeah. And like I said, there's real people. So you can talk to them face to face. You can understand a lot of what they're saying through their body language. Yeah, through the expression on their face. Nobody's using makeup here to try and look different. Nobody's auditioning for whatever you want to become. None of that's happening here. Yeah. So enjoy it. And I really encourage you to ask what's on your mind. Yeah. And to say what you think. Don't worry about being wrong. We're all wrong. Yeah, we're all wrong in one way or another in terms of what we think. Yeah, let me give you an example. When I was first learning about Buddhism, it was here in the States, and then I went to the monastery in Nepal, and we were with Lama Thubten Chodron, if you've heard of him. And he, Lama was quite an amazing person. But most of the people who came had first been at Freak Street. I don't know if Freak Street still exists in Kathmandu or not, but it was the place where all the hippie travelers went to finally get some chocolate cake after traveling overland through the Middle East, craving chocolate cake. And you get to Nepal and, oh, wow, you can go to Freak Street. Yeah, so you get some dope, you get some chocolate cake. And then you hear about this Lama, up on a hill, and you think, oh, I'm going to go, some kind of guru, must be mystical, magical. So you go up there, and they had meditation courses, and they would teach us. And so, some people are half stoned, some people are all stoned. Yeah, there's a few people who weren't stoned. And some people raise their hands, because we do, in Tibetan Buddhism, we do visualization practices a lot, and imagining the Buddha, imagining, sentient beings and cultivating certain kind of feelings and attitudes towards them. So somebody raises their hand and says, Lama, what do you think about meditating on LSD, on some acid, yeah, we can give you some, Lama, if you want to try it. And Lama would look, he'd kind of look at everybody and he'd say, but you're already hallucinating, dear. Why do you want to take that stuff? Yeah, because from the Buddhist viewpoint, how we see things right now is not the way they exist. We paint on top of things, and then we believe what we paint. And so he wasn't buying any of that stuff about drugs. He said, you're hallucinating already, and that is a source of your problem in cyclic, why you're in cyclic existence, taking one rebirth after another in a situation that isn't completely satisfactory. In fact, that isn't satisfactory at all. So, what you need to do is stop your hallucination, not do more of it. Okay? And people go, what's he talking about? Yeah, but people would take note. Yeah, So when I say that we're all wrong, we're all wrong in the sense of our fundamental ignorance and how we perceive others, how we perceive ourselves, how we perceive the environment. Yeah, we make everything very hard and fast, very concrete. Yeah, this is my identity. Okay. And we live in a world of identities. I just see within the last decade or two, I mean, this whole thing of finding your identity, stating your identity, and now you have so many choices of different words to describe your identity, and I can't even remember them all, Yeah. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. And, this is my race. This is my ethnicity. This is my religion. This is my family background. This is my gender. This is my sex. This is my socioeconomic class. This is my, whatever it is. Yeah. And we've got to find our identity, and nobody else appreciates our identity. Yeah. Nobody appreciates. The whole country, except my little group who shares this identity, is against us. Yeah. So we all cling to our little group with our identity, and we're all playing the victim. Nobody else accepts us. Nobody else appreciates us. We're being persecuted. I mean, this is copied from our dear former president. Yeah, who is, always a victim. So, and you get a lot of mileage out of being a victim. Yeah, because nobody treats you fairly. You can point fingers at everybody. It's not fair. And so what that does is it makes us all very self-centered. Yeah, I'm not denying those identities on a conventional level, yeah, but clinging to them, and setting ourselves apart, and then claiming that, nobody appreciates that, and people are discriminating against us. It backs us into this little, into our identity that we have made very concrete, yeah, that we believe is real. And then we wonder why we can't connect with other people. Yeah. So I think this is a good time to question some of those identities, not in the sense of throwing them out or anything, but just looking at how you talk to yourself, what you say about yourself. Okay. We have a few different identities in there. One is, I'm the best. Yeah, I'm the best. I'm here at Young Adult Week. I'm going to show everybody how much I know about Buddhism. I'm going to be the best student. Or, my identity is, I'm always the one that has a little bit of disruption. So I'll, disrupt a few things and be a little obnoxious. And, because I've been like that since grade school. And that's my identity, and that's how I get attention. Or, any number of things. So sometimes our identity is, I'm the best one, and nobody appreciates it. And other times our identity is, I'm hopeless. I'm the worst one. Yeah. Everybody else is sitting in perfect meditation position. And I'm squirming. My knees hurt, my back hurts, everything hurts. And they're all sitting like this, totally in samadhi, blissed out in another realm. And I'm like this, I can't do anything right. I'm doing everything wrong. I don't understand what they're doing. Do I have to bow? I don't want to bow. I don't know how to bow. But what is bowing all about? Well, I don't want to know. And so we get ourselves kind of all twisted up. This is a product of a lot of our thoughts and how we think about ourselves, yeah. So we get quite twisted up. And then last year's EML, you know what I learned in last year's EML? That everybody has trauma. Yeah, the whole group, kind of about the same size. And we shared, we all have trauma. And to me, trauma has a specific meaning. To me, trauma is trauma. And trauma is real severe. It's like, well, like I said, I grew up in the middle of the Vietnam War. Trauma is what a lot of the soldiers came back with. Being under fire, being, in a foreign culture, killing people you don't even know for a reason that you don't even know. Yeah, to me, that's trauma and the fear that they had. Do any of you have parents who were, in the army, in the military in Vietnam? Yeah, so you might know. Yeah. So I was asking them, well, what do you mean by trauma? Oh, well, everybody has it. Our family is trauma. Your family? Oh, well, okay. Yeah, it was like for you, this is 1 year later. Do you all have trauma? Yes. Maybe. No. Yeah. Maybe. What they told me last year, when I asked about, what do you mean by trauma? What is trauma? And one person said, well, we all have it. And that's how we connect. We all talk about our trauma with each other. Yeah. I found that so interesting. Because, now I'm not denying trauma, okay? But what I'm saying is, often in reaction to trauma, we solidify everything. And so even though what traumatized us is not happening now, it's not happening now. You're sitting in a room with safe people. Yeah. Still, the mind, latches onto that and forms very solid ideas about what the world is like, how I fit in, what I'm capable of, and so on. And so people really underestimate their potential. Do any of you feel that? Yeah, one person. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we get an idea, oh, my family was like this and this happened to me. Therefore, in any situation that even remotely resembles that, I'm anxious, I'm afraid, I'm nervous, I don't trust anybody, I'm looking out for harm. Yeah. So that happens, yeah, and then people live through that perspective of thinking of themselves like that. Do you get what I mean? You're forming ideas, okay? For example, yeah, how many of you, when you came here, knew some of the other participants? None of you, okay? Well, yeah, but you don't look, sorry, you don't look like you're a young adult. Yeah, so, yeah, we don't count, you know, yeah. We're in part of the Over the Hill Club. But we're not really over the hill. Yeah, they think that. So, where was I?
You asked if they knew,
Yeah.
if anyone knew.
Yeah. So, yeah, we just create these things. Yeah. So everybody came here. None of you knew anybody else. Okay. Now, so what do you think before you go in a group or go to a place where you don't know anybody? Yeah. So some people, before, they go, they think, oh, I don't know anybody here. I bet they all know each other. Yeah. And I don't know anything about Buddhism. I bet they all know something about Buddhism. And I'm walking in here, and am I going to fit in? Are these people going to like me? Am I going to like them? Are they going to say things to me that are insulting or scary? Okay. So somebody may be thinking like that before they come into a situation like this. Somebody else may be thinking, wow, I'm going into a situation where I don't know anybody. That's going to be really cool because it's a whole group of people. They're individuals. They all have different ways of thinking, and they come from different backgrounds. So I'm going to learn a lot from listening to them and learn how they think about life. Yeah. And that's really, I like those situations. Yeah. Instead, of going to the same old things with the same old people who talk about the same old things, here's a whole new group of people. So this is going to be cool. Okay. So, nobody's even entered the building yet, but those two people both have very solid expectations of what's going to happen. Yeah. And one person is like, anxious and am I going to like them? Are they going to like me? Am I going to fit in? What's going on here? And somebody else is, oh, yeah, this is cool. I get to meet a bunch of new people. And I bet a lot of them probably, they don't know anybody and they may be a little bit anxious, and I can go and talk to them, and that'll make them feel better. It'll be interesting to get to know them. Okay. So two different people having two different ideas going into the same situation. What do you think those two people are going to experience?
What they expect to experience.
Yeah, what they expected. So we formed an identity, we formed a conception, and then, so we create our own reality in many ways. We experience what we tell ourselves it's going to be like. When I was younger, I was younger at one time. When I was a kid, my parents often made me go places and do things I didn't want to do. It's like, you're gonna, be part of the band or the orchestra, and in school. I don't want to learn to play an instrument, or if I do, I want to learn to play the drums. All I have to do is go bang, 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 bang. That's easy, because I was terrified. I was gonna, I'm not gonna be any good. Yeah, and everything is always a contest of how to compare myself with others. And when the view of, I'm no good, I have no talent, everybody else is better than me, when that one's occupying my mind, then yeah, sure enough, that's exactly what happens. So things like that, are going places, doing different things, riding a horse. I want to ride a horse, You're going to go and, all your friends are going. Man, that's okay, let them go. But it's good. You go and you ride a horse and you see what it's like. Okay. So, they made me do things that I didn't want to do. And I was sure I would not like those things. And I would say to my parents, I'm not going to like it. I'm not going to enjoy it. I'm going to call you after 2 hours and cry and come home, want to come home. Except I knew I couldn't pull that one off. Yeah, my parents, you can't do that with my parents. So so I would go, and my mother would keep saying, but you'll have a good time. No, I won't. Well, she was right. Yeah, so often, I went and did those things, and I met nice people, and I had a good time, even though I was concerned beforehand that I wouldn't. Yeah, I do not enjoy horseback riding still, okay? But when I was in Tibet, I had to ride a horse, so at least I had some preparation before that. Yeah. And they gave me a very docile horse. I was very happy with that. But, it was good to have had that experience. Yeah. So I think it's, we want to learn to instead of saying, I can't, to say, well, let's explore this. Let's see. And even if I decide I can't or I don't like it, well, now I have a reason for it. Instead of just saying beforehand, no. Okay? And I think this goes very much for meeting people with different ideas from different backgrounds. Yeah, it's so interesting. I find it interesting to meet people who think differently than me. Okay, it's interesting. That means I don't always agree with what they're saying. Okay, but it's interesting to really ask somebody, okay, so yeah, so why do you believe that? Yeah, why do you believe that? I've had some karma where often on long plane flights, I'm sitting next to evangelical Christians. Yeah? Anybody ever had that experience?
Literally on my way here.
On your way here? Yeah, these people don't give up. Yeah. So one time I was sitting next to a young man. I would say he was mid-20s, yeah. And we're talking, and he's telling me, about his, beliefs and how he sees the world. And then he starts talking more personally, and he says, I want to get married. And in our branch of evangelicalism, men and women have very set out roles, very specific roles, and the man goes to work and provides, and the woman stays home and has babies, And he answers to God and she answers to him. And that way, everything's, very clear about who has the final say and how things go. Yeah, you look like I looked when he said that, Look at her. Yeah, I was like, oh my God, you mean it's like the 2000s and there's somebody who thinks like that about women and wants a wife who, is like in the 9th century, or 5th century, or 5th century BC. Yeah, it was so interesting. And I said, well, what happens if she wants to work and have a career and learn different things? Oh, well, she can't do that. That's not the role of the woman. And she'll be much happier being at home with her kids. I said, well, how would you feel, having to be at home with kids every day and not having any avenue for your creativity and your intelligence and your competence? And you could tell he had never thought about that, like what it would be like to be a woman in that position, because he had been brought up that this is just the way God set it up. And, he was in the position of power, so why question anything? And then he'll just marry somebody who will go along with that, because I guess in their sect, then that's everybody's been schooled like that. I cringed. I was like, oh, I'm so glad I wasn't born in that environment, But it was interesting, even though totally opposite to what I would want and what I experienced in my family. It was like, go get an education. I was hardly out of the womb when I was told I was going to college. There wasn't a choice about going to college or not. It was like, you're going, And, so I had a totally different upbringing, and I was thinking, like, what would it be like to have had that upbringing and to think like that? Huh? And I grew up Jewish, but my parents weren't very religious, so, yeah. But Orthodox Judaism, the role of women is very similar to that. Somebody made a movie, it's called Unorthodox. Any of you saw that? Yeah, you saw that. Very interesting. Yeah, about a young woman who grew up in an Orthodox community. And, she wanted to learn about the world. But she was, she grew up, and it's set in a modern setting. She grew up, and a matchmaker had to find her a husband. There was no dating. Yeah, your matchmaker comes, finds you a husband. There's no getting to know each other beforehand. Maybe you can sit in a room with a chaperone and talk a little bit. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're married and you're supposed to have a baby within 9 months and 11 days, Normal gestation is 9 months and 10 days, yeah. So supposed to have a baby right away and then have another baby after that and one after that, one after that. Yeah. And I thought, oh, even in the culture that I grew up in, or the religion I grew up in, they have that view of women. Yeah. The Orthodox do, That in my family, that was not how the view of women and the women's role, at all. But it's interesting to learn, how people think and how they learn what they think, and do they question different things? Yeah. So that's why I'm encouraging you during this time that you're here to ask questions and explore and and learn from each other, because I think people, it came from, we all have two eyes and a nose and two ears and so on, but we came from, we're conditioned by different things. We came into this life with our own karma, and we also have our own way of thinking, and so it's very good for us to open our mind and see not everybody thinks the way I do, and that's okay. I can still connect with these people. We can still be close. We can still be friends. So, getting along doesn't mean we have to always think exactly the same. Yeah. So the Dalai Lama even talks about that in terms of religion, which, as we know, at least in this country, religion is a source of like so much conflict, isn't it? Yeah. And like, I mean, the whole overthrow of Roe v. Wade, and in Oklahoma, anybody here from Oklahoma? One of our nuns is. They just got permission to open a public school paid for by taxes, people's taxes, that is under the church, which is completely illegal, because we're supposed to have separation of church and state. But, somebody obviously thought that was a really good idea and pulled it off. I'm hoping it'll go to the Supreme Court. Yeah. But like, how do people think? How did they get there? And do I just say, those people, they want to convert everybody and they think their religion is best, so I'm going to stay away from them. Actually, it's quite interesting to listen to people's arguments. So His Holiness the Dalai Lama, does everybody know who he is? Yeah. So he does a lot of interfaith dialogue, and you'll see him with people of all different religions. And when he's with them, there's a picture of him, in Hinduism, they put the red mark here, picture him with like that. There's a picture with Muslims where a certain kind of cap on the head. There's a picture of him at the Wailing Wall. There's a picture of him with the Pope. Yeah, and he's very good friends with what's his name? Archbishop Tutu. Yeah. And they've done a book together and also a video. If you haven't seen the video, it's really sweet. And here are two people, with different ideas of the universe, who agree on a number of things, on the value of love and compassion and forgiveness and so on, but theologically, very different. And, if you read the book or saw the video, here they are. They're laughing together. They're playing together. Yeah. I was cracking up because Archbishop Tutu was moving and trying to show the Dalai Lama how to dance, And part of our precepts is we don't dance. His Holiness has never danced before. And Archbishop Tutu is teaching him, like this. Dalai Lama's kind of, it's so sweet. And His Holiness also very close to one Episcopal minister in the UK. Yeah, very, very close. And they do things together. And again, different views. And then at one time, that minister said, well, all religions come to the same point. So we can all agree and get along because we all come to the same point. And His Holiness said, I'm not so sure about that. Yeah. But in any case, we don't need to agree in order to get along. We can disagree and still be friends. We can disagree and still get along with other people and respect that they think differently than us on some issues, but on other issues, the issues that are important. Theology, some people hold that as very important. I don't think theology is so important. It's what's in your heart that matters. It's what kind of living being you are. Yeah. Are you one that's self-centered, who's always looking out to get something for yourself? Or are you somebody who cares about other living beings? I think that's much more important. Yeah. And for this one English clergyman and His Holiness, they both had that attitude towards other living beings. Yeah. And so they got along quite well, even though His Holiness said, I don't think, we do have differences. Yeah, that theologically and so on, things are different, but we can still get along. But then what I find very interesting is when the Dalai Lama comes to the West, he'll talk about Christianity to people who are Christian. And he'll, in Buddhism, and you'll learn this throughout the week, we have a certain way of, okay, put it this way. Again, my personal experience. As a kid, I always heard, love thy neighbor as thyself. Do you hear that? Yeah. Did you know anybody who did that, who loved their neighbor as themselves? Yeah, I didn't know anybody. I thought, this sounds really good, but I don't know anybody who does it. And I don't know how to do it myself, because if I'm honest, I get angry, I'm judgmental of other people. How I can't just say, love thy neighbor as thyself, love thy neighbor as thyself, and then my mind changes and I love people, yeah, even when they were mean to me. It's like, how do I do that? And so what attracted me to Buddhism is it has a technique that shows you how to do that. Yeah. Think about this, and then think about that, and then think about that. Yeah. And just think about these different things and see what you conclude at the end of it. Yeah. And myself and most of the people I meet, we all agree, oh yeah, there's a good reason to cherish other living beings. It's not just something we should do, it's something that's quite reasonable. Yeah? So if you can, so the theology or the philosophy behind why cherish others may be different. That outcome is the same in terms of, the outcome. But His Holiness, back to my point, when he's in the West, he'll say, yeah, for those of you who believe in God, then God created all the living beings. And so you should be kind, if you value God, then you should be kind to God's creation. Yeah. And then he would talk about, kindness and, this is God's, how can you hate God's creation and say that God is wonderful. You should love God's creation. So he doesn't believe in God, yeah, but he knows his point is to explain in some way that people can understand according to their own philosophy the value of kindness and compassion and so on. Yeah. Okay. And he's not being hypocritical saying that. He's just sharing what he has learned from his Christian friends. And that gives people who, just heard love thy neighbor as thyself but didn't know how to do it, an avenue according to their own philosophy to open their heart and learn to care about others. So I've been talking a lot. Maybe you need some time to ask questions or offer some opinion. But don't be afraid of me shooting it down.
Do you want us to go now? We're not supposed to stay.
Oh no, the discussion is something different. This is just Q&A. You can stay for that.
Well, I don't know if it's a question per se.
Good.
I kind of agree with a lot of what you're saying regarding identity and definitely the whole perspective thing. Like I think I took a counseling class a long time ago, and my professor said like the biggest difference between someone developing depression and not is kind of their perspective. So let's say someone's in a car accident, like one person would say, "Oh my God, and they survived, of course. I'm so lucky to be alive, And then another person, same car accident, same circumstances, kind of goes in a spiral. Like, oh my God, my car got wrecked, health insurance, etc. And kind of they fall into a spiral. So I completely agree with kind of all those points. I guess this is more of an opinion, and you can kind of follow up on it. I feel like all of that is completely true on an individual level, especially the identity part. Like I agree that if you're constantly, I'm being persecuted because of my race, I'm being persecuted because of my gender, you're gonna see that everywhere.
Yeah.
And I agree with that, but I feel like on a societal level, those are issues that are systemic. And I feel like if we look at history, if it weren't, like I get like sometimes it gets excessive in today's society, but I feel like throughout history, if it weren't for people giving name to things, giving identities to what's going on, like, racism or socioeconomic status, things wouldn't have changed. It's kind of like identifying the problem just so a solution can be provided. And so, like, that's always been my issue with literally, like, everything. Christianity, anyone that ever talks to me about anything, I always kind of bring this point, and I'm kind of like, that sounds great on an individual level. Talk to me more about on a
societal
global level, because that to me just sounds like passivity.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Very good question. Very good question. So, yeah, it sounds good. It sounds good. Yeah. And it requires a lot of effort. Yeah. But a group is nothing more than a bunch of individuals. So a group can create an identity for itself. And there's different ways of holding an identity. Yeah, there's the way of holding an identity of, okay, I'm an American. Okay, why am I an American? Why do I identify as an American? That's the passport I carry. Okay, does that mean that to be an American, I have to agree with everything the government does? It does mean that?
No, sorry, I'm following along.
Yeah.
You're asking me.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
No.
No,
Yeah. I can be an American
Right.
and totally disagree with what the government, or not necessarily everything about the government, certain things about the government. Okay? So I can hold that identity as an American tightly. My country, right or wrong, everything America does in the world, we're spreading democracy and peace. That's what they told us during Vietnam. It's still the same story now. We're killing people, we're killing the enemies so we can live in peace. Excuse me? Will you explain that to me, how that works? Yeah. We're killing the enemy so we can live in peace. I didn't understand that as a kid. I still don't understand that. Okay? So that part of America, right or wrong, waving the flag, land of the free, home of the brave, where everybody is equal, where the Statue of Liberty, everybody lives according to that. No, I don't believe in that. I'm not American like that. That's not my patriotism. It's a very racist country. Yeah, it's a very sexist country. But the ideals in the country, even though the founding fathers, they didn't have any mothers doing it because they were busy sewing flags. Yeah, so you remember Betsy Ross? Yeah, the only woman we know. Yeah, and she got her thing because she sewed a flag. It would have been very different if the men had to sew the flags and the women, the American women and the British women talked to each other and tried to figure it out. Yeah. Anyway, on a society, those aspects of America I do not identify with. I do not applaud. I say it out loud that this is how I see the country. Yeah. But I think the ideals are quite beautiful. Yeah. Even though the founding fathers themselves didn't practice them, or maybe they thought they practiced them, but within a certain group of people. Yeah. But not everybody. Those ideals, yes, I find them very inspiring. But that doesn't mean I have to like everything about the country. Yeah. And so I hold my identity as an American in a loose way. Yeah. It's just, I was born here, I was raised here. Yeah. But I also know that I'm only the second generation born here. Yeah. And that my grandparents, were fleeing from violence and came here to, find a place that wasn't violent and where they could live. So I'm quite aware of that. But, I'm not my grandparents, but I've been influenced by them. Mm-hmm. So I think in that way, yes, we have group identities. But sometimes, like, you could go so extreme, like, okay. So America, the land of freedom, okay? bring me your poor and your refugees and all the people being persecuted. Okay, so there were tons of Jews who came into America at the late 19th, early 20th century, fleeing the pogroms in Eastern Europe and in Russia. Pogroms were violence, uprisings in towns. The Christians would go in and burn things down and so on and so forth. Okay, so they came here. Then around 1920, or it might have been 1924, they stopped immigration. Yeah, not only on the Jews, but from everybody from Eastern Europe. Okay. And then, and then we all know the evolution of Hitler arising in Germany and the Holocaust and 6 million Jews being murdered, along with Poles and gay people and prisoners of war, that they had equal opportunity. Well, they didn't murder their own people, but everybody else they were okay with. And so again, people were stuck in Europe and they applied to come to this country, Jews did, and they were turned away. Yeah, and there was even a ship that sailed here, and the US government wouldn't let them dock. Yeah. And this occurred not many years before I was born. It's not like ancient history. And so I could get really locked into my Jewish identity. Yes, and well, this is the whole Jewish identity. Yeah, there were always the persecuted people. Yeah, we're the persecuted people. 4,000 years ago, we've existed for 4,000. They've persecuted us ever since then, always persecuted. And we joke about it, that a Jewish holiday, they're all the same. They were trying to kill us. We won. Let's eat. Yeah? And so that's the theme. You grow up with that, hearing that as a kid. I went to Israel to teach Buddhism. And when they found out I came from a Jewish background, I don't identify as Jewish, but I say readily I grew up with that background. Then one of the papers did an interview, and one person asked me, they said, well, are you Jewish? And I said, well, that's a big question we discussed in Sunday school. Is Judaism a race? Is it a religion? Is it a culture? Is it, what is it? Is it the food? And somebody said, the next time they try and kill us, are they going to try and kill you too? That was that person's Jewish identity, Okay, I don't know her background. She's living in Israel. She might have had parents that were in the Holocaust or whatever. I'm 2 generations removed from the persecution in Europe. Okay, so I have a very different feeling about it. Yeah. So that kind of identity, wherever you go into, that you belong to this religion, cultural group that's always being persecuted. So be on the lookout for who is anti-Semitic, because they just did this in this synagogue and that synagogue, and then that becomes your whole life, how you look at everything. And I rejected that. Yeah, I said, I do not want to have that an identity of persecution. I refuse to live my life with an identity of persecution. Yeah, so it's true what you say. Groups of people who are persecuted have to speak up, But there's many different ways of speaking up. Yeah. And if you go in, we're persecuted, you're always persecuting us, look at this, look at that, and you're angry, that doesn't convince people at all. Nobody likes to be screamed at in their face. Yeah? So I thought, recently when we had the, a few years back with the George Floyd murder, okay, it was fantastic that so many people spoke up, yeah. But when it became, accusatory and blaming and like that, then it turned people away. So even some of the white people who were allies, that somebody wrote a book about, what was it? White fragility, and there's some other terms for that. But anyway, I thought they really, you want to help, but you're going about it the wrong way. Nobody likes to hear somebody else who's a total stranger say, you're fragile. You crumble, You think you're so powerful, but look at what you do. Yeah. That's not going to convince people to let go of their incorrect stereotypes. Yeah. And so I felt really sad about that. Yeah. But if you hold an identity more loosely, you can still say, okay, here this is. You can explain the situation, and explain the harm, but you're not accusing people and putting things in their face, because that's just going to turn them away. Okay? So it's a matter of, how you convey your message and your motivation in conveying it. Do you want to say you're angry, or do you want to say, this is my experience, I want to work together with you to try and remedy it? Okay. I mean, this is one thing I've learned in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. Sure, we meditate all the time on equality, and especially, all sentient beings want to have happiness and its causes. So, even that tick that's crawling all over you. Anybody been bitten by a tick yet? Yeah. Not here. Okay. Sorry. Okay. No, don't apologize. I'm glad you haven't been bitten by a tick here. Our ticks don't have Lyme disease, by the way, but it itches like crazy. Okay, so if you get bitten, ask Venerable Jigme we have some, what's it called? Itch remedy cream, and it works really well. Anyway, back to the topic. So we're talking about all sentient beings are equal, wanting happiness, not wanting suffering. Thinking we're the most important and others are less important is completely unfair. Okay. Now, we look at the situation, let's say in Buddhist monasticism. Okay, the Buddhists set up different levels of ordination, and what he set up, the men and the women both had novice, and they both had full ordination. The lineage for the full ordination in Tibetan Buddhism never went to Tibet. So the nuns can't take the full ordination. So then that places the men in power. Okay? Even if they have the ordination, the men are still seen as the first group, and the women are supposed to sit behind, and so on. Okay. So, that is not how I grew up thinking like that. Okay. My mother was, she was very strong, but she was also a housewife. Quite interesting situation. Anyway, so I saw when Westerners went to Dharamsala and they were with the Tibetan community, yeah, some of the Western women would get very upset because they were looked at as second-class citizens, because it's just kind of common in that culture that women are second class, and they don't have the smarts. This is the same thing in all cultures about women, And I saw some Western women get very angry at the Tibetan monks, about that. And it didn't do any good because all the monks did was say, oh, you're angry. Anger is an affliction. Anger creates negative karma. It's not getting you on the path to Buddhahood, and they don't listen much to people who are angry. So here they were trying to point out an injustice, and they were actually blocking the people from listening to them. Okay, so I observed this, and I also knew, okay, you've got to handle this in a very, very different way to get anywhere. And yelling and screaming is not going to work. And accusing them of being sexist, and that's not going to work. Okay, so what I do is when I was always taught, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Okay, did you hear that when you were little? No? It means when you're in a certain culture, go according to their way of acting. Okay? So, so when I was in the Tibetan community, I acted in a way that I knew it wouldn't stir things up. Yeah? And as a result, I have there are many monks who are my friends, who I can talk things over with. And now if I have some kind a situation involving men and women, then I can talk to those monks because I've developed a trusting friendship with them. Whereas if I had come in just accusing, I wouldn't have had any of those friendships. And I wouldn't have been able to talk with any of the younger generation about some of these social issues that they're not aware of. Okay, Geshe-la here is quite different. He's very different. But so how you hold that identity and how you act. If so when I go to teachings in the Tibetan community, big crowd, well, first of all, I'm a Westerner and they have a different section for us, which is very kind, But in some situations, there isn't a section, and so I know I go and sit behind the monks. Okay, I don't like to sit behind the Western monks because I assume that they have a different attitude. But sometimes I'm quite wrong. But I assume, that they grew up in the West, they have different, but, okay. But when I'm with Tibetans, I'll act that way. I don't necessarily like it, okay, but it doesn't harm my self-confidence, okay? Sitting in back doesn't harm my self-confidence. And I think that's the important thing. What's dangerous is when you're in a group that's being discriminated against, and that discrimination you adopt it and you start thinking, oh, I can't do that. Yeah. Like probably this young man who is going to marry the woman who's going to be a nice, sweet wife at home, she's probably adopted that. Yeah. And will be very happy being a housewife at home with her 15 kids. Yeah. Maybe 16, maybe 14, I don't know. But yeah, so her self-confidence, her self-image has been damaged by being in that kind of culture. Yeah. And I did realize after I came back to the States that I had lost some of my self-confidence, but it was very easy to regain it, and I hadn't lost it to the degree that I was just going along with their view of women. Yeah. Okay, is that clear? Understanding? Yeah. So different ways of holding things. And I think the important thing is when you know what you believe and you know that the world is not fair, yeah. And in Buddhism, we have this idea, well, why isn't it fair? Well, it also has to do with our actions in previous lives. Yeah, if we persecuted people in previous lives, we might be born in this life in a group that's being persecuted. Okay, so in that case, then you have to also look at yourself and say, oh, is there any remnant of, I'm conditioned by my previous life where I, oppressed people or persecuted people. Does that agree with my current values and principles? No, it doesn't. Yeah, but I am experiencing the result of what I did in the past. So instead of getting mad at the people who are oppressing me now, I want to work for equality. But most of all, I don't want to oppress or persecute anybody else. Because if I do, then I'm just creating more karma to experience that result. And I'm experiencing that result, and I don't want to experience it in future lives. Yeah. So that technique of thinking about things in that way, it doesn't mean, oh, I deserve to be persecuted, I deserve to be oppressed. There's no idea in Buddhism of deserving harm. There's also no idea about I'm being punished for it. Nothing like that. But I'm simply experiencing the result. So if I don't like that result of my own actions, then I need to not create that same cause again and not do that to other people. And so in that way, I change. Yeah, and I have more understanding for people who are still stuck in that old way of looking at things, because I once thought like that. Yeah. Does that make some sense? Yeah. So, okay. I tend to give rather long answers to short questions. Okay,